Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you decided to join us for another episode of Discworld Noir. If you remember from last time, we were able to track Luton's attempted killer, as well as the killer of everybody else that we've been able to find the crime scenes of. Mundy, Malachite, probably Reagan, although it was less clear in that case. Certainly the clerk, who was drowned in a vat of wine. We weren't able to establish definitively who the killer was of the other two suspects, but it's a fair guess at this point that it's all the same being. I was going to say guy, but being is probably closer. Anyway, we tracked them to the sewer by some moss, and while there, we were able to find a pendant, and we established, by talking to two conkers, that the pendant is a dead ringer for one which was found on the temple of Anu in Al-Khali, a temple which was just recently evacuated and whose followers are now in Ankh-Morpork at the Temple of Small Gods, the cult led by Mooncalf. So that's a lot to swallow, and we've got a lot of work cut out for us. Now obviously one of the first things to do would be to try to find out more about the pendant, because the book saying how to open it had been removed from the Von Uberwald library. And I've got an idea about that, but first, one of the little tiny quirks of the game that we have to deal with is going back to the Von Uberwald mansion.
I headed back the way I came. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched.
Who would Sarah like to see this time?
I think I've said this before, but the "I think I'm being watched" dialogues happen when you leave a place to go to the city map and then enter the same place again. And there are a number of those, and I will go over that in another video probably. But for now, that's the reason that you encounter that. So we need to see Carlotta again.
I'd like to see Carlotta. Is she home?
I will go and announce your presence, and she will tell me if she is.
How droll. I like his little short pants and boots. That's funny to me. And his little maid cap, too. All of that's good design.
You're up late.
I can never sleep after I've been stabbed to death.
So,
What did you want to talk about?
we've had one conversation with Carlotta post-lycanthropy when she bit us and turned us into a werewolf. However, if we talk to her again...
So, do you do this all the time? Set up some poor sap and get him to do your dirty work?
All right. I admit, I deceived you. But you're not my puppet, Luton. You never were. I could see the fire in you, and I liked it.
That's why you infected me?
You haven't been a werewolf for long. You don't know what it's like. You can't have a decent relationship with mortals when you're a bloodthirsty wolf 1 week out of every month.
You ruined my life so you could have a companion?
Don't be so melodramatic, Luton. It doesn't suit you.
What would you call it?
I gave you a gift, and it's a wonderful gift. You just have to get used to it.
Of all the washed-up men in all the cities on the disc, why did you come to me?
Why does anyone do anything? We're all pawns in someone's game, Luton. The best we can hope for is to take charge of our lives. And don't forget, never forget, if I hadn't done this, you'd be dead. I saved your life.
It wasn't much of a life to save.
It could be.
If I became your lapdog, I could never do that.
I wouldn't ask you to. You're special, Luton. You're like me. The law isn't for people like us.
What is?
Well, that's another thing I've been trying to figure out for years.
So that's very interesting dialogue. You can see the kind of world that Carlotta lives in. She assumes that everyone is either manipulating or being manipulated, and she herself is a great manipulator. You can never exactly take what she's saying quite at face value. So according to her, at least, she werewolfed us, A, because our lives were in danger, although she was the one that put us there in the first place by hiring us, and B, because she sees some kind of kindred spirit between us. I think it's really interesting to look at parallels between Luton and some of the other characters in Discworld. So an obvious choice for parallels is between Luton and Vimes, the chief of the Watch. He doesn't come off well in this game, but in most of the books he is a very dedicated and very effective policeman. So seeing sort of the difference between this bitter, washed-up shell of Luton and Vimes succeeding in sort of taking the light path to justice is interesting. This time, I think between Luton and Carlotta, there definitely is something there. There's a neat parallel between him and Carrot and Angua in the books is another watchman. Carrot is an extremely charismatic, almost unconsciously so, person and has a big old crush on Angua, who is another werewolf. I think Gaspod mentioned her earlier, and they get along in this much more awkward, halting way. I mean, things progress very quickly with Luton and Carlotta, but there's also not much trust, and it's just this sort of dark, devious relationship. It's very interesting. I don't know. I like the way that people are portrayed in this game, as I have said before. So she doesn't have anything to say about much of anything.
Have you heard of the Temple of Anu Anu at Al-Khali?
I'm sure you can think of something better to ask me, Luton.
She doesn't have much to say, as I said. But, in fact, we need to ask her about things that we have asked her about before. So I'm going to kind of skip through this dialogue here in a hurry. Basically, what it comes down to is we need to ask her about her alibis for Reagan, Mundy, and Malachite's murder. Here we go. So we'll just power through these here real quick. And?
The person who killed Mundy hung him upside down and poked his eyes out. Can you think of any reason they might have done that?
What? No. Why should I?
Well, you knew Mundy. I didn't. I thought you might have an insight on it that I didn't.
And?
Did you kill Mundy?
What? What do you think I am, Luton?
It's got nothing to do with what I think of you, Carlotta. But the Watch are investigating, and if they find out about your connection with Mundy, you're bound to be a suspect.
So why are you asking me if I did it?
Let's just call it professional curiosity.
If I had done it, would you turn me in?
That depends.
On what?
On why you did it.
You don't strike me as a moralist, Luton.
I'm a simple man, Carlotta. I have simple ideas of what's right and what's wrong. The trouble is, things are seldom that simple. It's always somewhere in the middle ground. I try not to jump to conclusions. In my line of work, that can get you killed.
That must be a tremendous incentive to think everything through.
I do my best. You still haven't answered my question.
I didn't kill him, Luton, if that's what you really want to know.
Do you have an alibi? I told her when the murder took place and asked her if she had an alibi. I wasn't surprised when she did. Frankly, I reckon I could have said any day and any time, and she'd have had an alibi. She was that kind of woman.
There are witnesses who can corroborate where I was.
And where were you?
I was in the Temple of Small Gods.
Spend a lot of time on your knees, do you, sister?
We all need a little absolution.
For your sins?
Everything I do is a sin in someone's eyes.
Moral relativist there again. I think it's also worth remembering when Luton says stuff like, in my line of work that can get you killed. He has been doing this private detective thing for about a month now, and this is literally his first case. So, anyway, just something to keep in mind. Okay, so Mundy was the longest one.
Reagan's dead.
I'm not surprised.
You don't seem to care.
Everybody dies, Luton. Mundy, Reagan, even you.
What's your point?
No point. That's just life.
Where were you when Reagan was killed?
When was he killed?
Shortly after dropping you off at the Temple of Small Gods.
Well, there's your answer then.
And, notice a sort of a theme in the alibis here.
I told Carlotta when Malachite was murdered, and asked her where she was at the time.
I was at a service then. Why do you ask?
A service?
I happen to enjoy services.
I bet I would, too. Why don't you invite me to one?
I wouldn't be allowed to bring an unbeliever.
How do you know I'm an unbeliever?
I doubt you believe in anything.
A man can change. Don't you have a recruitment policy?
I'd rather not talk about religion. It's such a controversial subject.
Anyway, so no particular guesses for which religion that she's actually a member of, but by asking about those 3 deaths in that particular order, at the time in which we've asked, and after having spoken once to her, this is one of the few things that are kind of tricky like that in the game, we get this special topic.
I can't help but notice that your recurring alibi for the murders is that you were at the Temple of Small Gods.
Everyone needs a little solace now and then.
You seem to need it a lot.
I'm not easily satisfied.
Which god is it that you worship?
I really don't like to discuss religion.
Come on. I only want to know the name.
All right. Her name is Errata, but I don't appreciate you prying into my spiritual affairs like this.
Can I pry into your physical affairs?
My affairs are never just physical.
I bet you say that to all the boys.
So, Honestly, if I had to guess, I would have said she probably was a worshipper of Anu Anu or something like that.
Carlotta claimed she worshipped the goddess Errata.
It's interesting that you can only get this topic now. I wonder if you were supposed to be able to get it before, because this would be more of a surprise, I guess, earlier on before we knew Malaclypse and all about that. Anyway.
Tell me about this goddess Errata.
I already told you, I don't like to talk about religion.
She's not like then.
He's the god of Omnia.
Is that the place with the Quisition? All the overzealous holy wars and tortures?
It used to be. They had some kind of reformation, and now they're just overzealous about singing rousing hymns and distributing fundamentalist pamphlets in the street.
Well, that's a kind of torture all of its own.
You're telling me. I got cornered by one of them last week. How do you think I know so much about it? It was 3 hours before I could get them to leave. Thumb screws would have been quicker, at least.
And if Luton can't get you to leave, that really says something. Anyway.
I'll be in touch.
I'll be waiting.
We need that particular topic, errata, and it is a tough one to get. Again, not impossible, but a lot of topics you can get from multiple sources, and that one you can only get by following that particular trail. It took a long time for me to find the first time. So anyway, a logical place to go at this point would be the Temple of Small Gods, to check out Carlotta's alibi, and to ask, ask Mooncalf about her, ask Malaclypse about a few things. However, instead of doing any of that, we're going to head to the new hall. Because, if you remember from before, on this Octarine board, which we can't see again, Luton decides not to go werewolf in this room again, they had a list of the books that they were going to study, and we know that there was a book on temples in the university library, which we are unable to access. And so, we need to find out about the Temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali, which is what this pendant is a part of. And one of the things that they were supposed to research, the students here, were the temples of, if I'm not mistaken, the Great Neph. And so, I've heard people complain that this puzzle was obscure or hard to figure out. I don't know, it seemed obvious to me the first time, so maybe I just hit it right. Anyway, we get the Temple of Anu Anu. Do a little Octarine writing.
I altered one of the subjects on the board, switching the Great Nev for Al-Kali. Now all I had to do was see if anyone took the bait.
And we will give the students a little bit of time to read that and hopefully fish out the book for us. If you remember, the Bledlows will not let us into the university library, saying it's only for students and professors. So hopefully they'll handle that. And now is as good a time as any to go check out the temple. We only have a few topics of interest to talk to both Malaclypse and Mooncalf.
I need your help again.
We already know what he says there.
Do you recognize this pendant?
It is an ambiguous Puzuma talisman.
What does it do?
It keeps away ambiguous Puzumas.
Does it work?
I don't see any Puzumas around here, do you?
I walked right into that, didn't I?
You sure did, Luton. Alright, let's see.
Have you heard of the Temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali?
So, interested in comparative religion, are we, Luton? Or perhaps you're an archaeologist?
Given their propensity to smash open sacred monuments, loot them of everything of value, and generally desecrate sacred places everywhere, archaeologists are about as popular with priests as atheists. Mind you, in a world where gods are bad-tempered and damn good shots with a lightning bolt, nobody likes an atheist either.
I see.
Carlotta says she's a follower of Errata. Is that right?
Bah! I am the only true follower of Errata in the whole of Ankh-Morpork. Unless you have seen the light, Luton.
Seen the light?
Do you believe in the ways of Errata?
How could I not? Surely, Errata is the most worthy of all gods to follow.
Either you've just had a miraculous conversion or you're learning to lie. Good! A useful skill in followers of Errata.
So, he didn't exactly confirm that,
I'll have to...
He didn't exactly confirm that Carlotta isn't a follower of Errata. Still, I can't really see Malaclypse giving out sermons And if you remember from before, Mooncalf seems to think that he's seen Carlotta at some of his gatherings. So you wonder if something isn't going on there, if maybe she's infiltrating the cult of Anu Anu, or if she's actually an Anu Anu follower and didn't want to mention him for some reason. But surely she'd know we could talk to Mooncalf. Look at this window over here. That's really... That's a moon in the center. Oh, cool. I think that's a wolf head, maybe? Although that looks like antlers, so I guess it could be a moose or something. I don't know. Man, I'd rather talk about this window than the pizza window. For all the talking about that we do. That's really creepy. You find new stuff every time through this game. I just really appreciate that. This is like my 6th time through, and I'm finding dialogue and things that I've never seen before.
I have some more questions. Ask them.
Anyway, I really like the voice acting for Mooncalf.
I understand there's a temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali.
Indeed, one of the finest temples on the Disc.
Then why are you here? Why not worship in your own temple in Al-Kali?
Revengealism.
What's that?
It's where you go out into the community to attempt to convert people to your faith by threatening that something terrible will happen to them if they don't.
Mooncalf wasn't telling me something, but I didn't know what. Logical, I suppose, but unsatisfying.
Yeah, so we know that he's hiding something, but we don't quite have the knowledge to worm it out of him yet.
Can you tell me anything about Errata?
Bah! Maleclipse's deranged goddess. I do not waste my time with such trivialities.
Alright. So Anu Anu seems like a fairly typical god for the small gods. I mean, he's probably powerful in conjunction to the number of followers he has, and we're not exactly sure how many of those there are. It's definitely a cult instead of a major religion, so Mooncalf made it seem like it was a small business, but I guess it would be huge compared to Errata. Although, you wonder if Errata gets power in the same way the other small gods do. Gods usually get power in conjunction with the faith bestowed upon them, and it's fairly arbitrary. Whatever people believe of them, that's sort of what they become. But Errata is almost more like death in the sense that she's apparently a force or a concept made manifest. Just like death is a being and is in fact, what happens to people when they die, death comes. Errata might be sort of a misunderstanding, a sort of slippage in information transfer in Discworld. Or not, she's not actually a force at all, and we're just projecting that and inventing something and calling that force. Either one, I would say, is equally likely. Anyway, here's a book on temples.
A copy of Frescoes and Fatal Traps of the Temples of Al-Kali miraculously appeared after I changed the octagon board. I guess the students took their studies more seriously than I thought, but fortunately they still didn't have much idea what it was they were studying most of the time.
Excellent. So, we can't take the book with us. He'll just say he can't steal it if we try to. Let's look up the pendant.
The pendant's design matched the one in the book for the seal of the temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali. The temple was famed for its intricate door mechanism, and the book described how to manipulate the seal to open the temple doors. I used the same method on the pendant, and it opened with a faint click.
Excellent.
Inside was a small piece of paper with names on it. One name leapt out at me. Therma. I decided to keep the list to myself.
Well, let's read the rest of them and find out who's on there.
The names on the list were Mooncalf, Satrap, Therma, Coom, Gelid, Warb, Foyd, and Kondo. Some I recognized. Some were strangers to me. The question was, what did they have in common? Why did someone have a list of their names, and how did they get it into the pendant?
Aww, Warb. What's he doing mixed up with these guys? So Mooncalf we know, Therma we sort of know, through whispers and murders. And Warb, I hope he's not caught up in anything. He seems so nice. And he helped us. Oh, he did help us to get the sword, which was later recovered. Oh. Well, I guess we don't know exactly what his involvement is yet, but I like Warb, so I hope he's not actually malevolent in this case. Anyway, we've got this list of people now. Remember, the pendant was on the ship. We found it in the nest of whatever creature has been killing people. So presumably, it A, knew about the temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali, so it had some archaeological knowledge, so it was able to open it, and B, needed a list of these names. Just the fact that Mooncalf's on there makes us want to investigate more the Temple of Small Gods. Let's see if Malaclips knows anything.
I need your help. I read out the list of names to Malaclips, and that sounds familiar look came over his face.
Ah, yes. Anu worshippers are these. The first ones. They're up to something secret, too. Out of Malaclips's ears, soft in the darkness, they scheme.
I'm investigating them. Want to know what I find out?
As long as it doesn't cost me anything. I don't make rash bargains, Luton.
Probably wise on Malaclips's part there. So it's not exactly clear what he means by the first ones. Does he mean the first names on the list are Anu Anu worshippers, but not all of them? Does he mean these were chronologically the first ones? Although that's hard to imagine how that's so, because a lot of these people just came from the temple at Al-Kali, presumably. And, Warb, we know, has a history here, was at the university and things like that. And presumably Therma's been around for a while, too. Whoever she is, if she really was Madame... I guess she's not Madame Lodestone, but whoever she happened to be, they're established here. So maybe there was a cult with multiple branches? Or maybe he means they're first in authority, as in the, first among equals kind of things. Let's see if we can weasel anything out of Mooncalf.
I have some more questions.
Ask them, if you must.
Just really like that voice acting.
I wasn't about to reveal that I had the list to Mooncalf. I had a feeling that would be suicide. But perhaps I could use it to trap him. Someone told me that you know Therma.
Indeed. And who might that have been?
It's not important. Is she part of your cult?
No. No, she's not.
But you know her?
No. I've never met her.
I see. What about Satrap?
Are you intending to bore me with a list of people's names? I haven't time for this tomfoolery. I must preach the gospel of Anu Anu.
Thy kingdom Coom and all that.
Yes, indeed.
I'd clearly unsettled him mentioning Coom. Now I just needed to sit back and watch what he got up to.
I thought that was really clever. I just like Luton's dialogue all the time. That was a fun way of saying it. Now, I said I found new things every time I played the game. I kind of figured out at this point what you were supposed to do and usually just did that. But if you look back up here, look at Malaclips, you can see, or excuse me, at Mooncalf, it looks like he's talking to somebody. And indeed, if we go back, there's a troll here now.
There was a troll standing near Mooncalf. I could only assume he was a part of Mooncalf's cult.
I assume so too.
What brings you to the Temple of Small Gods?
He will not answer you. He has taken a vow of silence.
I see. Anyway, we would really like to know what Mooncalf and this troll are talking about. And with all the fuss they made about that big window, what it looks like from both sides, the fact that our killer was standing outside it at one point, I think it should be clear that the actual thing to do is to circle back around. And because we're going to want to listen in on them, as we found out in the palace, being a wolf is the way to go for that. And there we go.
With my sharpened wolf senses, I could hear what Mooncalf was saying to the troll.
And I think we may have to do something about it. We will have a meeting of the true believers after this evening's sermon.
Sure thing, boss. You want I should go now?
No. You keep an eye on Luton if you can. I'll go back to the sanctuary and leave a message for the others.
You got it, boss.
Interesting. So, we now know that there is such a thing as the true believers.
I'd overheard something interesting at the window of the Temple of Small Gods. Something about a meeting of the true believers.
So that makes you think that there's sort of a cult within a cult, sort of Russian-nested cults going on here. Perhaps there's a more general, large cult of Anu Anu, and the names in the locket were the true believers. So that means when Malaclips said that they were the first worshippers of Anu Anu, he meant first in precedence, or the inner cult, or the secret ones, or something like that. Well, he's about the only ally we have in the temple right now, but boy, it would be nice to figure out what's going on with that meeting of true believers. So let's see if he's willing to lend us a hand.
I need your help.
Now, interestingly, this next dialogue can only happen if you've already talked to him about errata, and you can only get the errata dialogue from Carlotta. So, I kind of think that's a bug, because I think you should be able to get it from Malaclips too, but whatever.
I overheard Mooncalf talking about a meeting of the true believers. I'd really like to know what that was about.
It's tough to find out what the cult of Anu Anu is up to.
Is there any way I could listen in to one of Mooncalf's sermons?
The sermons don't take place here. They hold them in the inner sanctum.
The inner sanctum?
It's the center of worship here in the Temple of Small Gods.
How come? I mean, there are a vast number of gods and goddesses that the temple has to provide for. Are you telling me they all have to share one room for the services?
Absolutely. High priests are always complaining that so-and-so was hogging the sanctum all morning, or that such and such left hair at the bottom of the holy font. It causes a lot of tension around the temple.
Can you get me in there? I'd like to have a look around.
I could arrange to have the sanctum for a while if I told them I had a follower, but I don't.
Well, we do, now that we've asked about errata.
So if I agree to be your follower, you can get us into the inner sanctum?
Yes, I can. But you wouldn't really be my follower. The followers of errata don't follow each other. We don't even follow errata. We follow our own ways.
So why is there a church of errata at all?
You're learning, Luton. Keep thinking like that and you'll go far in the church.
So can you get me into the inner sanctum?
I can, provided we can find a time when the cult of Anu Anu aren't there.
Are Mooncalf's lot in there often?
All the time. And that's not all either. He sneaks away after each one. I think they've got a secret sanctuary somewhere.
I'd like to find that.
Actually, I'd quite like you to find it too.
Can't resist a secret, eh?
No, I'd just like to get in the way of everything Mooncalf does. Him and his big evangelical budget and hordes of out-of-tune followers singing and chanting at all hours of the day. He's gonna get his comeuppance, and anything I can do to speed it up suits me fine.
So you'll help me?
Wait here. I'll go and make the arrangements.
So, as with everything in Luton's life...
It took a while, but eventually Malaclips got me into the inner sanctum. Malaclips stayed by the door to warn me if anyone was coming.
As with anything in the Discworld, and Luton in particular, anything worthwhile is accomplished by pettiness, so Malaclips has got us into the inner sanctum. Seems small for a big cult, but apparently Anu Anu was able to bring a lot of followers over from Alkali. Let's see what we've got here. Not much in here. There's some more neat windows.
There were small stained glass windows in the inner sanctum depicting the story of how a valiant mortal, pure and gentle, was cruelly tricked, taunted, and tortured by the gods. Just for a laugh.
That sounds like Luton's story in a way, although I guess he's not pure.
The inner sanctum sported a beautiful lectern. The plaque said it was donated to the temple by Mr. Fedean, of the militant servitors of Ikebana, goddess of topiary. Searching, I discovered there was a cavity in the base of the lectern.
Well, lacking anything else to do, I guess we should check that out.
The space under the lectern was large enough to fit a whole person inside. Unfortunately, there wasn't much room to move inside. And to my embarrassment, I got stuck.
Luton! They're coming! Hide!
I'm way ahead of you, Malaclips.
It's the man
Dearly
himself.
beloved, we are gathered together in the sight of our God, Anu Anu, to speak of our devotion to the Anointed One at this, our time of need. But before today's sermon, I'd like to read from the cult bulletin for a moment. Firstly, there's a jumble sale next Saturday to raise funds to buy a fresh goat to sacrifice. We'd appreciate it if as many cultists as possible could attend. We don't want to have to sacrifice another pigeon. It hardly befits a deity of the illustrious wonder of Anu Anu to be sacrificed another of Mrs. Jerboam's gerbils either. Yes, I know they breed like flies, but that's not the point.
The sermon was one of the most tedious things I'd ever had to listen to. And as if that wasn't bad enough, then the hymns started. Why the gods wanted to listen to such droning monotony was a mystery to me, but I suspected they just liked to make the mortals suffer.
Given Discworld cosmology, they probably like to do it because we think they do.
The temptation to sink something sharp into Mooncalf's feet was getting very hard to resist.
But no, we'll do something else. We want to follow Mooncalf, and we can smell, so if we put something very strong-smelling on Mooncalf's feet... Incidentally, if you don't do this quick enough,
I sprayed Mooncalf's feet with Sapphire's trawl perfume. That should make the little psychopath a little easier to follow.
I was going to say, if you don't do that in time, he moves away and you have to repeat the whole sequence, getting Malaclips to let you back in to the sanctuary and everything. I think they just do that because it's not guaranteed that you'll have the troll perfume at this point, so they want to give you a chance to get it. Could be frustrating if you didn't pick up the troll perfume, because there's no reason to go back to Sapphire's dressing room now. Anyway, time to follow.
Sapphire's perfume cut through the stench of the river like a trawl wading through a dwarf street rally. The bright reek led into the shades, the oldest and most dangerous part of the city.
We get a nice little FMV to show us what's going on. I guess we're a full wolf now is what we're supposed to be.
As a wolf, I listened to what the so-called true believers were saying through one of the windows of the sanctuary.
Greetings, brethren. I call to order this extraordinary general meeting of the secret cabal of the true believers of Anu Anu.
You smell nice tonight, boss.
What?
What is that? KC2?
What are you blathering about, Foyd?
The troll
Anyway,
is Foyd.
I see we're all present.
Therma not present, boss.
What is that accent?
Therma has to keep a low profile at the moment.
I'm sure it's something
Do not
recognizable.
concern yourselves with her absence.
Okay.
Why should Therma have such special status? I have important business of my own to be doing, and these interruptions aid no one.
Can't hear that.
Quiet, Satrap.
Aww.
Mooncalf wouldn't have called us together if it wasn't important.
Aw,
Indeed
warm.
not. There is an investigator, a Mr. Luton, who's been asking worrying questions. I think he may know about Nylonethotep.
I do now. I still say this is madness. There must be a better way to glorify our beloved Anu Anu without taking such risks.
You always were the spineless one, Coombe.
Silence, Kondo. As chairman, I will not permit such disputes when the meeting of true believers has just been called to order.
When can we have a dispute?
It can wait until we reach any other business.
Nope.
Damn.
It's supposed to be us.
Shh! What is it?
I heard something outside.
They say bravery is what tells the men from the boys. Well, I was a wolf, so I figured I could be brave and still run away.
I think that was supposed to be us knocking something over, I guess. But anyway, as a wolf, we can easily get away. So, we've now got Nylonethotep. If you, this was a lot more obscure of a reference, I think, when this game first came out. This is a new location on our map, the Sanctuary. This is supposed to be sometime later, I assume, after the meeting is over. So here we are. This is the True Believers, a suitably spooky soundtrack. We've got a map of the city.
For some reason, the cultists had a map of Ankh-Morpork in the sanctuary.
Okay. And a fresco.
The sanctuary was decorated with a strange and disturbing fresco. Closely examining the fresco, I could see that one of the symbols made a frequent appearance. The recurring symbol on the fresco was like a distorted star with an eye in the center. I wasn't
Creepy.
sure what it was. I made a sketch of the symbol in my notebook.
At this point in the game, this is when Luton starts... Ah, yes. Starts down writing things like symbols. Anyway, now we've got that symbol and we've got a name, Nylonethotep. And so that sounds like time for some research.
Who would say?
I will see my own way up to the library, thank you. Let's find out what it is. Whatever it is, it's making even the cultists of the true believers of Anu Anu nervous. As I was going to say, you can probably guess that this is going to be a bad thing, Nylonethotep, sounding a bit like Nylonarthep, or however you say the H.P. Lovecraft title. The awful
The
ancient...
Necrotelecomnicon was a book that legend spoke of, saying that any mortal man who read it would be driven insane. I learnt about it from a copy of Necrotelecomnicon discussed for students with practical experiments that I found in the library.
Perfect.
In this tome, there is a description of the old dark gods of the Disc, including the terrible laddering holler, Nylonathotep. Apparently, Nylonathotep was once summoned by a series of 8 murders, forming a perfect octagram, focused at the center of the Circle C, thus releasing it from the sunken city of Leshp, where he was trapped, along with drunken Cthulhu Bapalulu. The book speculated about the whereabouts of Nylonathotep now, but beyond him being safely imprisoned somewhere around the Circle C, it drew no conclusions.
Well, this sheds some light. We now know that Nylonathotep, as if there was any doubt, is a Lovecraftian kind of thing. So this is another being of power in the Discworld universe. We've got the small gods, who are brought into power and empowered by human belief. There are the aspects, I guess you could call them, like Death and possibly Errata, who are just facets of being, which are sort of personified. I guess we haven't actually seen Errata personified, but at least Death is that way. There are the horrors from the dungeon dimension, which come up in the books, and Nylonathotep is different than those. Those are gross things from a parallel dimension, kind of like elves, but even worse. And then you have these old gods who are, as old gods tend to be, pretty wiggly and gross, and safely either trapped or sleeping somewhere. And it looks like they used to be, the last time Nylonathotep was summoned, it was by an octagram of murders.
I looked up the octagram of murders in the library, but I could only find the entry I'd already seen in Necrotelecomnicon discussed for students.
I see. I do kind of like Cthulhu Bapalulu. That's maybe my favorite name for an elder dark god. Let's see if we can find anything on that strange symbol. So it's not exactly clear why the believers in a small god would want to have anything to do.
I found the obscure star-like symbol in the Necrotelecomnicon discussed for students. It called it the sign of the eel, or the Elver sign. It was apparently a protective ward against some of the older, darker gods of the Discworld. The tome also explained how to inscribe one, the order of tracing being very important. Not that I believed any of this mumbo-jumbo, but hey, you can't afford to be too careful, right?
I'm pretty sure we can start believing some of this mumbo-jumbo. So, while everything is certainly not clear yet, I mean, it's not exactly clear what the cult of Anu Anu is going to want to do with one of the dark gods, we can get the sense that they're going to do something to glorify Anu Anu, and they're worried about it because they think the risks are too great. And it may be that, in addition to just getting people out of the way, that the murders we've witnessed do in fact have cultic significance. They may be similar to the octagram of murders before that summoned Nylonathotep, which is very interesting. It would, for instance, explain why we weren't instantly killed at all the other sites of the murders. Maybe they need them to be done in a particular way, in a particular order. Anyway, I think we should now go ahead and turn into a wolf and get the sense of everybody. Clever, clever.
The scent of the troll perfume blotted out everything else in the sanctuary.
Yep, I do like how they did that. The same means you used to get here means that you also can't discover everything. Alright, so one more thing in this update. We know of 6 deaths. There were the 3 important people and the 3 unimportant people. The 3 unimportant ones that we've witnessed, and the 3 important ones that we've just found out about. Now, incidentally, this is the part in the plot where, if you haven't found out the locations of the other 3 murders, you need to take some time out and investigate them. You can put off investigating them until now, but you do need to find them out, because we know where everybody was killed. And because we know where they were killed, we can plot out the octagram of murders. Because we know where all the points are going to be, I think with only like 3 murders, we could probably work out where all the points were going to be.
I
But
knew where Malachite, Mundy, and Reagan had been killed, but the triangle didn't seem to suggest anything useful.
no. But without knowing 6, we can't find out where the other 2 are going to be. Interestingly, it starts telling you something every time you put in a new one now, which I'm not sure why, but whatever.
I knew precisely where 4 murders had taken place. I needed more information.
Yeah, well, we had it, Luton, so just calm down. Matham, Saifa. One of the
I
guys...
found the precise location of 5 murders.
Oh, guys
I
are
needed
girls.
to know more.
I'm not sure exactly, but one of the cultists' name was Coombe. I'm not sure if that's a reference to Coombe Valley, which was a major plot point in one of the books. It is remembered as a major battle between trolls and dwarves. It was actually something different, but I'll let you read the book if you want to find out more about that. I think that might be with a K, though, not a C. Anyway, so let's trace out this final one.
The murders were marking out a perfect octagram, just like the one that had been used to free Nylonathotep from sunken Leshp centuries ago. If I was right, there would be 2 more murders, one in Dagon Street and one in the Wizard's Pleasance. If I knew which one was next, I could stake it out. In the center of the octagram was the Disc Theater, which almost certainly meant some kind of cosmic evil was entombed there. I can't say I was enthusiastic at the thought of checking it out.
That's some quill. Alright, so that has really marked out our next series of tasks for us. We have got 3 new locations: Dagon Street, the Wizard's Pleasance, and the Disc Theater. We will decide which one of those to stake out next. We will go and investigate these killings. We will find out what the cult of Anu Anu is up to, and we will hopefully prevent Nylonathotep from being summoned from his rest so he can stay sleeping with Cthulhu Babalulu. But we will do all of that next time. Let me know in the thread which one you'd like to check out, and I will see you later.